Hey guys, hopefully that was a refreshing break for all. If you wanted some ideas for what to do in your break, it's always nice to, just do a few stretches, just arms, some shoulder rolls, something like that. It's always brilliant. I would right now try and touch my toes, but I don't want to embarrass myself because I can only reach my knees. So I'll abstain from that. But, feel free to just do some stretches and just get moving a little. Sometimes a little bit uncomfortable just being on your seats. Well, now it's time for a very, very special guest. So I'm really excited to introduce him. To touch on a little bit about him, he actually works in international human rights. He's got a special focus on access to justice. He works with and provides support to civil society, including youth, so all of us, environmental and women human rights defenders across the Pacific. So he's quite he's got quite a broad reach, so to speak. Previously, actually, he's performed duties as a lawyer practicing in family and criminal law litigation. Joe has actually recently even started the Heartfulness practices, which Marilyn touched on earlier, and also, you guys got a little bit of a taste of in the earlier session with Karishma. So he's actually utilized the tools and techniques from this, and he's made it as a part of his lifestyle. And personally, when we first spoke to Joe, we just thought, wow, he's such a cool guy. So I know you guys will be thinking the same after the end of his speech. Actually, maybe even as soon as he starts talking, honestly, he's just. So honestly, we can't wait for you guys to know as he shares his life stories and experiences with us on the topic, moderating your mindset. So please put any questions in the Q&A box as usual, and we'll try to get back to you by the end. And now, Joe, over to you.
Thanks so much, Dharmesh. Greetings from Fiji. Thanks very much for that lovely introduction. I know I'm the last speaker closest to lunch, and so everyone's very hungry. I'm going to skim through my topic very briefly, but with a few exercises. And just to highlight my topic for today, I'm speaking on moderating your mindset. I'll cover background and my experience on heartfulness and me. I'll then give you a snapshot of youths in the Pacific and the different spaces that they're working in, and some challenges and issues that they're experiencing in 2020 in this day and age, especially with the new dimension of COVID-19. I'll then cover an exercise that's called the morning diary. It's just imagining, or rather reimagining your day and your morning. And the idea is to how you can focus into identifying your palettes and your canvas and how it's worked for me. And then I'll close off with painting it in a canvas and a lens of gratitude, starting with the little things. But first of all, many thanks to the team, and thank you so much for this inclusion. It's a privilege and honor for me to be speaking here today, together with an incredible panel of speakers, from Karishma to Annabelle, Marilyn. It's an extreme honor for me. So I'm very grateful to be part of this experience. And my talk today is really from a personal experience with heartfulness and what it's done for me in terms of the work that I do, the spaces that I move in, and how it's allowed me to center myself, to align myself on a regular daily basis, and how I'm able to moderate that in terms of my own personal mindset and experience. So as shared by Dharmesh, by profession, I'm a lawyer. And so just off the cuff, you can imagine the amount of challenges and issues in terms of self-care that's involved in that. And you may have heard or aware of the different types of outlets that people use, and some of them can be unhealthy and some of them can be healthy. For me, it's meditation, and for a very long time I've been accustomed to meditating on a regular basis, on a daily basis, and whilst I'm not religious, I find I'm very spiritual. And so when the opportunity came to join Heartfulness in February of this year by one of the local practitioners and trainers, Sashi Kiran, who works with works in civil society, it was a very welcomed opportunity. I joined the experience, and so there was like a very natural and organic integration into it. Usually, I come at the end of the day, or I start my day, I listen to aided meditation, which is binaural music or namaste flutes, and that just allows me to calm myself and get into my space. Sometimes I have candles on lit and scent as well, and it just it allows me to reflect upon the day before I go into it, to determine the spaces that I'm moving in, the people I'm interacting with, to ensure that I'm insulated and that I don't have, the usual responses and reactions, and that my defects or being impatient at times or being annoyed too soon doesn't betray me. So my as a background shared by Dharmesh, I work in human rights. I work for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights office based in Suva. And I just want to put a caveat that my sharing here today is from my own personal experience, and the views shared are my own views, both professional and personal. Why do I meditate? So in my line of work, it can be quite intensive. It can be fun at times, but it can be a space in which it's very stressful. And so meditation is very essential for me. And so the guided meditation by Heartfulness on a daily basis that we have at 5:30 in the morning, at 1 o'clock midday, and 8:30 in the afternoon are all welcome tools. Just as Karishma pointed out in her presentation, you feel recharged. And I have to be very disciplined about it, I confess, for the reason that when I don't drop tools for the meditation, I'm just constantly in that headspace where, it's piling layers and layers of confusion or a lack of focus. So it's June now in the Pacific, in Fiji, and it's what we consider our winter. So now and again I miss the 5:30 sessions. I still have my blanket over me, but I'm committed to the midday sessions and evening sessions and the guided meditation with our local practitioners, as well as Zoom sessions, with the litany of Zoom engagements that we have, including this one during this time. We have sessions across the globe with other heartfulness practitioners that are very helpful. And it's for me, meditation is like a muscle. It's going to the gym. You constantly have to be attuned to it and aligned to it. And so it really insulates you on how you conduct yourself, your character, your behavior, how you react and how you respond. So it's Heartfulness, while I've only been in it for 5 months now, it's been a welcomed opportunity, and I'm really enjoying the experience, and right across the globe with different practitioners of Heartfulness, getting into the different online sessions, meditation with Daji, and the different tools and techniques that that we use. I'd like to just briefly share the area of work that I work in. So I work with youth human rights defenders and women human rights defenders and human rights defenders at large across the Pacific, working across different areas. And these are what are considered frontline defenders. And they're working in different thematic areas, for instance, on youth rights, on women's rights, the right to food, right to education, access to justice, you name it. It covers the entire spectrum of human rights. And so in their line of work, they're often subject to different forms of reprisals, threats, and intimidation. And maybe I'll just put a footnote here that if what I'm sharing is perhaps triggering for you, you can just put your hand up, and I'll quickly roll over into the next topics. But this is the space in which the youth are working in, and it can be a challenging space, and it can be one that's where there's threats against them from state actors as well as non-state actors. It can be from family members and even friends in the community when they speak up to promote and protect the rights of other individuals in their community and challenges that they're facing, on violations for their human rights and restrictions on the enjoyment for human rights. And so that's the platform and the starting point from which the work that I carry out in the Pacific. And I provide capacity and training to them together with the team at the office, with partners across the Pacific from different sectors coming together in order to create an enabling space for them to work within. But you can imagine that already from this, it's a space for them that can be quite stressful, and it can be very challenging. So slowly by slowly, the tools and techniques that we're adopting are being shared with them, so that they can have some reprieve on a daily basis in terms of coping mechanisms, on self-reflections, on how they can continue the good work that they do without the burnout. And that's something that we've identified. And so that's a space that I work with. Those are my key constituents that I work with in the Pacific. In terms of youth at large within the Pacific, and these are shared experiences across the world, is that within the Pacific context, for example, it's 1/3 the surface of the globe. That's our first major challenge, our logistics. It's getting to the North Pacific, into the South Pacific, the Central Pacific, and it can be a logistical nightmare. For example, to go to Marshall Islands from Fiji, I have to go through 2 other countries, and to return, I come back to 3 other countries, and then I'm back at home. So it's about 2 days to get there, 2.5 days to get back. And I have colleagues in Thailand for participants in the Southeast Asia region. And they tell me, yeah, we do a day trip in the morning, we're back again if we have to go to the Philippines or Indonesia or to Vietnam or Laos. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But that's the dynamics in the space that we're working with. And what it means is, like, you take a pebble, a handful of pebbles, you throw it in a pond, and there you have the Pacific Ocean and the 16 Pacific countries that we work with, and individuals in these spaces. For youth at this time in the Pacific, some of the issues that they're facing include unemployment, and that's a big space for them, and access to economic rights, social rights, cultural rights, and unemployment rather that's more within the space of rather informal blue collar work. A lot of the education system here in the Pacific is geared towards white collar. And when I say the Pacific, Australia and New Zealand is also included in the Pacific, Asia Pacific space, but I'm focusing on the smaller Pacific Island countries, and this is a space that our youths work in, and our youths exist in on a daily basis. And amongst this range of issues, we have teenage pregnancies, we have issues of HIV/AIDS, issues in regards to access to health, sexual health and reproductive services, access to justice for juveniles, family support systems. We also have issues on youth participation in decision making. There's a lack of inclusion and consultation in that space. And recent studies in the Pacific and within the past year have indicated that there are high levels of violence against women and girls. And now, of course, with the COVID-19 situation, and I'm arriving to a point, if it seems bleak, bear with me, but within the COVID-19 dimension, it's been exacerbated exponentially in terms of the discrimination suffered, in terms of the inequalities. We also have the issue of environmental concerns, including climate change, and that's an existential crisis right across the globe. For instance, young people having to go further out for fishing to get their food, and because of the change in currents and in the ocean temperatures and so forth, shoals of fish are now swimming in different directions and further out. So people have to go further out, and there are reports of people going missing to go get food. In terms of firewood for the low-lying atolls across the Pacific, they need to go further out to access food to bring back to the homes in order for them to cook. Issues of adequate housing, and so these are the litany of challenges and issues that our youths are faced with. And of course, now in the digital age, with technology, there are spaces where youths have access to networks, and they have the personal devices, and so they're constantly on social media, and there's a high usage of social media across the board, and therefore a lot of positive reasons. And they get to access information, the right information, especially in this current pandemic. People can understand what are some of the precautions and safety measures that they can implement within the home space, with them personally. Right information in terms of medical care, education, and so forth. So there are positives in terms of the digital space. But then the negative components of it is, as you would all understand, is perhaps cyberbullying, which is quite prevalent in the Pacific. And you have young youths that are existing in this space, and in terms of cyberbullying against young women, young girls, young men as well. There's that have become quite problematic. I just have a point here that I really wanted to share. Right. So the cyberbullying and this exploitation that have become really destructive and addictive behaviors. So people are constantly being existing within these spaces, and these are issues that we're trying to address, and we're trying to provide the tools and techniques in the Pacific in terms of the human rights perspective. So my presentation has that dimension as well as the tools and techniques for meditation. So this is a space that the Pacific young youths and young people live in, and meditation isn't perhaps a daily activity that they get in daily reprieve, but the stress levels are very present and very real, and these are live issues that are faced by them. And so it's our objective to at least provide these tools across the Pacific through our Pacific Youth Networks, Human Rights Defenders Networks. And of course, as you'd understand, there is also, there are four main issues in the Pacific that are the major challenges for us. And the first one is that we exist in very strong patriarchal societies. So that's where the shift in inequalities come in. And then we have issues on equality and gender equality, where again, the power shift between men and women, and the diversity of gender, of sexual identity and orientation and sexual characteristics. And then there's this issue of climate change that's just cross-cutting right across the board, that's affecting people's access to food and to proper areas to plant their food and to gather food. Fishing grounds, the patterns on fishing grounds are shifting, and a plethora of other issues and challenges that are faced by our youths. And so this is the context that we have in the Pacific. What I'd like to do now is just a little short exercise, and it's called Reimagining Your Day. And the point of this exercise is it's a tool I developed when I go out to train and create awareness on human rights, so people can have a margin of appreciation. Because often they hear human rights and they're thinking, oh, it's activism, or it's demonstration and it's protest. But in fact, it's much closer to home. It's much closer to you than people more often think otherwise. So I'll just take this time to slow down, and I'm conscious of the time, and I'm conscious that we all want to get to lunch, but this is just a short 10-minute exercise. And Divya, Dharmesh, feel free to jump in at any point if there's someone's raised their hand or has a question. I'll ask you to put down your pens and your journals, just to close them, and just sit in the space that you're in. And I'll invite you to please close your eyes. Just focus on your breathing and take in a deep breath. In, out, another in, out, and the third time, a deep breath in, out. And as you sit in your space and as you find your calm and your center, I want you to recall your experience this morning when you woke up. As your eyelids flutter and you open your eyes and you're lying in bed and you try to focus your eyes. And I want you to relive in your mind the routine that you had this morning. You sat up in bed, you may have had your morning prayer, you may have time for your meditation, or you'd get up and you go and greet your loved ones, your family, or your pets, your children, your brothers or your sisters, if you have them. And then you go and you freshen up, you wash your face, you put on some ointments and cream, clean your teeth, you brush your hair, and then you get dressed, then you make your way to where you prepare your meal, your kitchen, and then you put on the kettle. It's boiling the water. You fill the kettle up with water, and the water is boiling, and then maybe you wanted a hot meal for your breakfast, a toast and some eggs, maybe just a fruit. And then you take your laptop or your device and you're setting up for the session this morning. And maybe you go into a quiet space, maybe your bedroom or the living room, to perhaps further meditate, to prepare yourself for the session today. And so now you fully recall your morning and what you did as you welcomed the day for the first couple of hours. And that's the area of focus that I'd like to draw you into in terms of your recollection. And so now we arrive at the important part. I'd like you, with your eyes still closed, revisit from when you first opened your eyes and you became conscious that you're awake. I want you to imagine if the bed was removed from you and you lay on the floor. I want you to reimagine that perhaps in your bedroom or in your sleeping space, a wall was removed, and instead a temporary structure or a tarpaulin was placed there. I want you to reimagine that when you went to the tap, you have to draw water from a well half a kilometer away. That when you use whatever toothpaste or ointment, it's perhaps a herbal-based one or a plant-based one, and it's not one that perhaps the greater number of people often use. That whatever cream you put on is not there, and there's no ointment there. And as you go to put on to dress, that perhaps it's just one of two shirts that you have in your keep that you can call your own. And you just alternate it. And when you go to the kitchen to sit down to make your breakfast, it's perhaps not the breakfast you had this morning, but perhaps not the nourishing, perhaps just the stable. And the water that you have needs to be boiled 3 times in order to remove impurities. And that the quiet, private space is no such thing because it's a space that's shared with others, or rather with other families and other communities, all living within a small space. And that you don't have access whatsoever to the laptop that you have in front of you, or the Wi-Fi, or your personal device. And that your day actually involves a totally different routine from that which you have, which could either be going straight into the farms or to work, and work under different conditions that may be unethical, that are not fair. And so that initial 2 hours from this morning was a complete change and a complete overhaul and a complete restructure from the reality that you live in. So I invite you to just think about it and reflect upon that. And now as we come out of this, I invite you to open your eyes. And I thank you for indulging me for that exercise and for those moments. And now let's have a quick reflection on what the exercise that we just underwent. There are two tiers, there are 2 points to it. The first one is the human rights lens, and it's a human rights component. And that the space that you're living in now, and I don't for once imagine that we're all privileged on this forum today. And I know that there's quite a diverse representation of participants. But for what you have, whether it's a roof over your head and a fenced home, these fall within the spectrum of human rights. So when you wake up first thing in the morning, you're enjoying your right to life, you're living. And it falls within the human rights spectrum of rights that are enjoyed in international law. And so when you get up, you're in a house, that space that you're in, that's your right to shelter, an adequate shelter, not just a lean-to or an inadequate form of housing. And then when you go in the morning to wash your hands from a tap or from a pitcher, that's your right of your enjoyment to clean water, the use of clean water, clean drinking water, for clothing, for the meal that you have. You have the right to food and nourishing food. You have the right to privacy within your own space to do things that you want, whether it's for your studies or it's for to change or just a space that you can call your own. And if you're working and you have your own apartment, that's your right to have that space, that privacy. And you also have the right to security, to ensure that no one can break in when you're sleeping at night. Protection, that's your right to protection under the law. So I'm bringing the human rights lens to you in terms of understanding what your human rights are and how it affects you on a daily basis. And of course, there's a wide spectrum and a litany of other rights that you enjoy throughout the day. And the right to property, if you have your own laptop, you can call it your own. And the right to information, to open up that laptop and type away, even if you want a recipe, that's information that you have a right to, and online, and that these rights should be provided to you, and that for you to enjoy. And it's the full enjoyment of human rights, and the full realization of human rights is a space that we work in, working with different stakeholders. And it's the phrase is all human rights for all. Now, the reality is, for the Pacific, for the Americas, in Africa, and in Europe, in Asia, and the South Asian continent, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, is that people often don't have the enjoyment of these rights. And they have to walk perhaps a mile to get clean drinking water. Mothers have to go out and come back home, and then they have to cook the food, and they have to get firewood. They don't have the simple mod cons that I myself enjoy. And to go out fishing, to get food and root crops, and making it a nourishing meal, because it's the right that everyone has to enjoy these human rights. And so, to dovetail that into my talk this afternoon, is, well, for me it's this afternoon, is that it's the little things in life that allow us to be grateful. And so for me personally, my palette is one of gratitude and appreciation. And I'll just step back, and when we speak of human rights, it's your right to privacy, your right to education is just as important as my right to food, my right to life. They're all what we describe as interdependent, and they're interrelated, and they're indivisible. You can't just separate, like, okay, you get to enjoy the right to food, you get to enjoy the right to life. No, it's all human rights for all. And so the palettes that we speak about today, whichever palette you have, it's in the same nature. It's all interdependent. So if mine is of gratitude, it leads me to other values and other palettes of love, of peace. But I choose to start with this one, and it's one of appreciation of what I have. And so it's framing it within these little things that you have, and that you can take a step back and you can reflect on it in times of adversity, in times of stress, when you're facing a lot of mental health issues. And I'm not an expert on that. This is from a personal experience, as I shared. It's my journey in heartfulness, as well as in meditation. Is to start from the starting point of gratitude. I wake up in the morning, I'm grateful for that breath that I get here, and the space to meditate, and even the privilege to know that I can meditate, that others don't have. It's an access to that information. And now I would say heartfulness found me. So it's been a pleasure to share on that activity and on that exercise, and I hope it was helpful to you. And it was a two-way approach for me, so that I got to share a bit about my work, and as well as how that easily integrates and organically dovetails into meditation, heartfulness, and the message that I'm sharing on having a palette of gratitude. So the takeaway for I hope your takeaway from this is, in terms of this self-reflection exercise and moderating your mindset, it's the focus on the little things that you have in life that give you the margin of appreciation that for what you have. But more so, it's that it's within us, as shared with early speakers, and Karishma says on meditation that you feel recharged. Annabelle shared something that resonates, to reiterate, the view that you adopt for yourself will profoundly affect the outcome and your view on life and your worldview. And of course, Marilyn, just moments ago, in terms of your creative energy and drive on how we can be of service to ourselves as well as service to others. I think these are the fundamental takeaways for me personally from today's experience and from the talks that we've shared with you. And I just want to stress on this one analogy that I learned this week from Daji was a lily in a pond. The pond is murky and it's muddy, but the lily is still beautiful. And I'm sure it's an analogy that you've all heard, but it's able to still, within all of this moving around, all of interfacing with different elements, interfacing with challenges and issues and different personalities and different egos, different mindsets, you're an ecosystem unto your own and you're a mindset unto your own. And you're able to regulate and moderate that yourself as an individual. And of course, through the tools and techniques of meditation that has been shared, and having, for me, a heart of gratitude, and for you, maybe one to focus on peace, on love and patience, and so forth. I hope that this talk has been very helpful and beneficial to you, and it's been a privilege for me. And I wish you all the very best. And I wish all the participants here the very best. And thank you so much for this time. And I hope you find your colors and your canvas. So Dharmesh, thank you once again, and over to you.
So Joe, before you run away on us, we would like to keep you for another 5 minutes, if that's okay with you. Just to answer some questions if we have from the audience. So I'm sure you're hungry as well, so we won't keep you for too long. I'm just going to give everyone the opportunity to have a think for a second in case anybody wants to ask a question. While doing so, I had one anonymous question come to me via text, which I'm just going to pose your way. And the person wanted to know what motivated you to serve humanity, which I thought was a very beautiful question. So do you want to just answer that?
Yes, absolutely. I think for me, it was, I'll be completely honest, I'm not that stellar student in class who was very studious. I was very disruptive as a child in class. And, of course, I have my own set of childhood experience and trauma. And it's sort of, as I said, I always attribute every blessing that I receive, that it finds its way to me. So it was just an organic progression that I graduated from law, even though I wanted to be a cook. But I was sort of molded in that way, and I embraced that as well. And I think when your perspective and your outlook on the world again is how you can best help others. Service is just a natural fundamental, is a foundation for that. And so it's helping other people, and in so many ways it's like a reticulation water system. It feeds you as well. It feeds your spirit, and you find it rewarding and satisfying. So I think it's outward as well as inward in so many ways. And I just naturally progress towards the work that I do, and I really enjoy it, and I find it completely satisfying.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We have a hand raised now, so I'm just going to unmute Sujata. And over to you, Sujata. You can speak now. You just have to, I think you have to unmute yourself now. So you are allowed to talk if you want to just unmute yourself.
Sorry, I think it was just by mistake. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so I think that's about it. I think I don't think we have any other questions. So thank you so much, Joe. I personally, I will just take 1 second to say that I was really looking forward to your talk. And to be honest, I find it just amazing that we are all so grateful for people like you on the planet, and you're saying that, you know, you live with a sense of gratitude, even though you're the one serving us and making our lives better. And just a personal thank you from my side, because it's people like you that inspire me so much. But I'm chewing into Dharmesh's thanks, so I'm gonna shoot it over to him now, otherwise he's gonna get mad at me. So Dharmesh, over to you.
Cheeky, Divya. I knew she would do that. She always ends up saying almost the same things that I think as well. It's annoying, Divya. No, it doesn't matter. Basically, I mean, I guess I told everyone right from the start, as soon as you heard Joe's voice, we all loved you. It was just, wow. You know, as I said, fell in love with you once again. It was just really good. But on a
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you so much as well. But on a serious note, if I was to say, you know, for people like me, it's just like I have to take so much time to just paint my own inner canvas, you know, balancing work, you know, academics, relationships. And it's hard enough doing my stuff. And I guess this is similar to what Divya said, but for you, Joe, you just say, you make your own canvas perfect. You don't just stop at that. You help others paint their canvas. And that's why you're just so inspirational to all of us. And I just feel that, sorry. I'll go again. Sorry. I just feel that, you know, with having people like you in this world, we can really actually grow our own canvases. Because if we try and help others, in reality, we'll be growing ourselves, right? And I'm sure you can agree to that, Joe, as well. You know, you really end up.
Absolutely, indeed. Yes, exactly. Yes, indeed, Dharmesh.
Yes, exactly. So thank you so much for that, Joe. And it's really, really great to have you. Thank you.
So thank you once again. And just to the team, you've been absolutely professional, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. And I wish everybody well. Thank you once again, Dharmesh. Thank you, Diva.
Thank you, Joe. So now, I guess some of you have been sitting on your chairs for a lot of time. So we hear you. We want to give you a bit of a break. So I think we'll give you a break for about 45 minutes. You can come back, you know, do the brilliant stretches that I taught all of you. I know they're brilliant. You know, I'm kidding. You guys are way better ones than me. I'm very inflexible, so I can't really stretch that well myself. Hopefully after the break, you guys can tell me some stretches to come back with. And just do your thing and come back in 45 minutes. And we'll see you then. Thank you so much.